Hey folks, you're listening to episode 22 of the Deeply Devoted podcast, a ministry of the E-Free Church of Bemidji, Minnesota. My name is Eric Nygren. I'm one of the pastors on staff here at E-Free Bemidji, and today on the Deeply Devoted podcast, my guest in the studio is a fellow member of our staff team, our very own Amy Graf. Amy is our Kidsmin Director. And what we want to do on this episode is to learn a little bit more about how we disciple kids and families here at E-Free Bemidji. So, Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Eric. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's fun to kind of, I see Amy every day here at the church,
Yes.
but it's fun to be in this setting and recording
it's a little
this. A little different. Yeah, let's see. I think I'm thinking of the staff team. Pastor Jerry's been on. I keep trying to bug Jessica Westland, our office manager. She'll be on eventually. Dan Evans has been on. Jason Robeck's been on.
Nice.
I'm just kind of working my way through the staff team here. So
Awesome.
Well, Amy, why don't we start by having you introduce yourself and your family, if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about even how and when the Grafs landed in Bemidji.
Well, my name's Amy, and my husband and I, we've been married for almost 24 years, and we were in northern Wisconsin before we came to Bemidji. Matt was an associate pastor, and I was teaching K-12 music in Wisconsin. And we just felt a release from the Lord of our time there and began searching for jobs. And I actually found that Oak Hills needed a chaplain and online. And I said, hey, look at this. And he did. And he goes, that's a different type of ministry than I'm used to. And it kind of checked all the boxes for him, and he applied, and he received that position at Oak Hills, and that's how we came to Bemidji. Oh, and we have 7 kids. When we moved here, we had 5 boys. So
okay.
We've gained 2 since we've moved to Bemidji.
There you go. Yeah. Well, yeah, hey, and I've gotten to know Matt as well over the years here, and I'd say that's a pretty good fit over there at Oak Hills.
Definitely.
And,
he loves it.
So
he does
definitely,
a good job.
Definitely the Lord was behind that and bringing you guys here from Wisconsin to Minnesota.
Absolutely.
So, good. Well, before we get into the kind of the meat of our episode, Amy, I know that, and we were just talking about this, I know you're in a busy season of life, and I don't just mean ministry. It is show choir season in Bemidji.
It is.
And so for those maybe that are less familiar with show choir and why it's such a big deal in Bemidji, could you kind of fill us in a little bit?
Yeah. So I have, out of my 5 boys, I have 3 that have been in show choir, and this is actually their 30th season, so it's kind of a big deal this year. The dinner show is coming up this weekend, and I know several of our church family actually go to that.
Yep.
And it's gonna be pretty neat. They're gonna have costumes from like 30 years displayed and
nice
things like that. But show choir is a group of choir kids. Well, some of them don't have to be in choir, but they try out. They have to audition to be on the team. And Vocal Motive is the varsity show choir, and then there's LVB is the all girls JV show choir or whatever. But they learn these songs and dances together, and really each show choir has their own story every year. Yeah. And usually, I really love the directors. Most of them towards the end, it's like a hopeful story. It's a good ending usually to their performance. But anyway, they begin competing down in the cities. And so after this big dinner show this weekend, they have the whole month of February, beginning of March. They just go and perform, and they have these competitions, and they've been doing really great. So it'll be fun this year. It's a new one. It's Masquerade Prom is the title.
Okay.
So they have masks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing to think of 30 years of doing that.
Yeah.
And it's when we moved here a little over 6 years ago, my oldest daughter, Evelyn, was already in show choir where we were in Iowa, and so she, in fact, when we came up here to visit, that was one of the first things we did. Is we met some of the folks in show choir and things like that. And I was just telling somebody the other day of when I think back to my high school days. I don't know if we had a show choir, but if we did, it was not a big deal, and not many kids would have been involved in it. But here, it is a big deal.
Yeah, I think between both show choirs, there's over 100 kids involved.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's pretty great.
Well, good. That'll be a fun kickoff here to the season.
It's going to be a busy weekend.
Good. Well, Amy, if I have this right, I think you joined our staff team back in 2022. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And we'll get into some of the specifics about your role in the ministry here, but maybe just kind of to go back a little bit. You mentioned, you did music, you taught kids and music, but how did the Lord call you to children's ministry?
Well, honestly, I think it was probably in high school.
Okay.
Like way back when. I was a camp counselor all through high school, for kids camp, and helped with VBS every year. In college, I was serving and actually working with youth because my degree is in youth ministries. But in the summers, I would coach kids softball teams, kids cheerleading teams, swimming teams. So I just really had a lot of involvement with kids.
Okay.
And then after I got married to Matt and he was full-time pastor, and we had kids. So I was just in the nursery and kids church. Yep. Started our Awana program way back when, VBS, things like that. I just was highly involved all along the way.
Okay.
And as I taught music too, kind of my best niche was that K-5 music. And God just really gave me a passion for kids throughout that. So.
Yeah. That's cool. So maybe some of those experiences along the way just kind of confirm that calling. Yeah. How many VBSs do you think you've been a part of over the years?
Goodness.
Yeah.
20 plus.
Yeah, many. Yeah. And still counting.
Oh, yes.
Right. Kind of looking ahead here. I also like to kind of think of this too, because it's not just our calling, but I think the Lord uses specific people, specific events in our lives, and be kind of curious maybe if some different people, different events in your past has shaped your passion for discipling kids.
Yeah. Probably my biggest person that impacted my life was my youth pastor.
Okay.
She was deeply devoted to discipling me. We met one-on-one all 4 years of high school that I was with her and beyond, all through college. Even a week ago, she texted me. She said, "You've been on my heart, and what's going on?" And we just were able to pray together even on the phone a week ago. So she's been highly impactful in my life. And then probably teachers I worked with as I was teaching music.
Okay.
One in particular, she was a kindergarten teacher, and she was just fantastic. Actually, there were 2 different kindergarten teachers, and they just spoke into my life, like just the love of kids, and sometimes how kids say the darndest things, like just to be aware of that, and you can just really embrace those moments and have fun with kids and teach them along the way. And so I think those are probably the 2 biggest things. Yeah.
What's kind of amazing to think about and probably somewhat humbling is to think that's you now. And to think about different kids that have come up through, not just kids ministry here, but kids you've had an impact on in the past, might be able to look back and say, boy, the Lord used Amy in my life at this stage in my life.
Yeah.
And maybe some of our kids, students here at our church, maybe you're the next kids ministry director in 15, 20 years, something like that. But it's pretty neat to just think about some of those things.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, we'll kind of get into some of the specifics of what you do here, Amy, part of our church ministry. So you oversee our Sunday morning and our Wednesday night kids ministry programs, as well as, special events throughout the year for kids and families. And I want to come back to some of those special events here in a bit, but maybe could you just kind of give us a big picture view of Sundays and Wednesdays, and maybe especially for those that aren't actively a part of those things, what's the difference here between Sunday school, beginners and kids church, and Wednesday night kids club?
Yeah. Sunday school, I have some great volunteers that have been there last year and this year, so they've built great relationships with their kids. Our Sunday school, we have a pre-K and kindergarten combined, and Becky Eastling is leading that group along with a helper, and then our 1st through 5th grade is all combined. And so I think through COVID and just kind of the shift in culture, Sunday school has kind of dropped in numbers, but discipleship is still happening, definitely, and teaching God's truth. So it's fun to see those kids grow. I was just talking to Deb Graves. She's the 1st through 5th grade teacher the last couple of weeks, and just how the kids have grown spiritually with her, and just her classroom isn't as chaotic as it was last year, because the kids know her and can trust her.
Form some of those relationships.
Yeah. So I think it's been neat to see the kids that come are very consistent, the ones that come. And so they're deepening their relationship with their teachers, which is really, really great. Beginners and kids church is separated as well. Beginners church is pre-K, kindergarten, and then 1st through 5th for kids church. And in those, we usually do some sort of video curriculum. It's our only time that we use kind of technology within ministry. And the kids really seem to enjoy that. It's kind of a break from the book work that they get on Sunday school and on Wednesday nights. And so they've enjoyed the more technology type of curriculum that we have for kids church and beginners church. And then on Wednesday night kids club, boy, it's hopping. We are busting at the seams in our classrooms. It's been really great. But this year we're going through the parables of Jesus, and the kids have just really enjoyed hearing those stories and how those stories can impact our life. So
well, and you think about just the complement, that's kind of what our student ministry looks like, our young adult ministry, our adult ministry looks like. That there's a difference between Sunday school. There's a difference between that and what happens in say the pulpit on Sunday morning, and what happens in a life group. And they all contribute to discipleship, but they're each kind of add a different component to it. And the same thing with our kids.
It's just a kind of a different flavor each time.
Yes, it is.
They come, which is good for kids, because I think they would get bored if it wasn't different each time.
Well, you mentioned Wednesday nights and just how it's, I would use that word buzzing.
Yes.
I tell people all the time, that it seems like every room in this building on a Wednesday night is occupied and buzzing with activity. You use that word too. Just want to talk a little bit about the atmosphere on Wednesday night, and maybe even just for folks that aren't here on a Wednesday night. They're not necessarily bringing kids to kids club or youth group. How does the rest of the church get in on what's happening on Wednesday night?
Yeah, I would. Well, first of all, your question here, it said, how do you describe the atmosphere? I wrote down sweaty discipleship.
Okay, that should be the book that you write. So,
I know,
what a title, yeah.
and sweaty can be like because of all sorts of things, lots of activity and games that happen, but also like small group leaders or teachers asking hard questions and awkward questions that youth and kids are like, oh, I got to answer that, and then they start sweating or whatever.
Love that.
But anyway, those are the two words that came to mind. But for kids who aren't coming on or people who aren't coming on Wednesday night, I would just say to get involved. One is to pray. Pray, keep praying, because kids are showing up. We had 2 new kids last night, and so that equals 2 new families, and then to show up would be just come and eat the meal, come and do that first, and just walk around and pray, pray over each room, say hi to kids, give high fives, if you just want to show up and enjoy what you see. I remember a book I read learning about youth ministry, and it was called Messy Spirituality, and I just really liked that one. Yeah. And one of the stories Mike Yaconelli had in there was about an 80-year-old woman who wanted to get involved in youth ministry, and he put her as the door greeter, and she impacted so many youth lives and kids' lives by giving them a handshake or a high five, and so I would love that. We would have a place for that in kidsmen or in youth ministry. And then if you wanted to serve, I know for sure in our kids club, boy, we could use some substitute teachers. Yes. Because sometimes our leaders get sick or whatever. Even if you want to say, you know what, the month of April is pretty wide open for me, I could be on your sub list for that month, or whatever would work for you. Yeah. So, and then one thing that's impacted me recently, I even had a youth kiddo reach out to me asking for a ride to youth group. And I already have so many kids in my car. I was like, oh, do I have another spot? But I did, and I was able to do that for her. But I think if people would just be aware of that, like in their neighborhoods or whatever, like if they know of any kids that maybe just need a ride here, those are lots of different ways that they could be involved.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think just come and eavesdrop for 30 minutes.
Sure.
Just come and experience it.
The other thing I saw even last night, our Oasis room. Yeah. So it's kind of getting full, which is great. And in there, it's just like a relaxed time of sharing together life. Yeah. There's not really curriculum or teaching, but Jan Parham's in there, and she's just leading it and speaking just life into other people. Yeah. So it's
and
really
that's
great.
Been new this year. Didn't we kind of launch that in the fall?
Yeah.
Right.
I think this is our second year of it.
Yeah. Just kind of something you might not expect, but something that's really beneficial, especially for those that are coming. So, and even that model, we've got a couple of life groups that meet on site on Wednesday nights, and most of those folks that are there are parents of kids that are here or students that are here, but a few of them aren't. And it's really neat to see some other folks that might be empty nesters or not yet have kids in that age group that are part of this too. So, and also in our Oasis room, I would always see a mom, and she would just bring her knitting, and she would be able to talk with everybody in the room and still knit and crochet, and so it's just a good relaxing spot. Yes. So. It is happening time. Now,
it is. It's great.
There are kids running up and down the hall, so use caution.
Yes.
But yes, it's good. But I mean, maybe with that a little bit, we've talked quite a bit in the last year about our church's discipleship pathway. It came right out of the strategic ministry plan. The 4 G's: gather, grow, give, go, and we've talked a lot about that. That doesn't just apply to adults,
right?
That's our whole church. So, Amy, how do you see those 4 G's at work with respect to kids ministry?
Yeah, well, kids love to gather, for sure.
Okay. Yes.
They love to be together, whether it's in a classroom, in kids' church. In a bouncy house all together, whatever it is, they love to gather together. Yeah. So I think too, kids are just learning more and more. They're learning more and more about God's truth and how to apply it to their lives. I can see just kids growing, and it's just so fun. Right now we're talking about on Sunday mornings, we're learning about generosity. And so learning how to give, not just, and kids don't have a lot of money, but teaching them how to give of their time, and which goes right into the go, and right now we're working on our blessing bags, which is a part of the give and go of that. And in the past, we've done Operation Christmas Child, and we help a Global Fingerprints child every month by supporting them, different things like that. I'm looking forward to some outreach events that kids can help be a part of, and maybe youth too.
Yeah.
So,
it's just neat to see kind of how we lay that foundation of faith. Kids will sort of grow into these things as they get older and mature in their faith. But the same principles are there,
sure.
and they're understanding that. Yeah, just even recently talking about the blessing bags and talking about giving and generosity. What a neat way to do that. Amy, as I've gotten to know you over these past handful of years here, I know that you not only have a passion for kids, but you really have a heart for parents, guardians, grandparents. And so I want to hear what you have to say about just, in what sense is kids ministry also family ministry?
Yeah. I also have a heart for youth because I have a lot of them in my house and a lot of their friends. It is all about family and partnering with the family to help our kids know who Jesus is. It can't just fall on my shoulders. It really, the parents and the guardians, grandparents, even older siblings, they can really speak into kids' lives. And so, I just feel like we are partnering together for kids to grow and to know who Jesus is. Yeah. So
I like that. That's the right way, I think, to think of it is partnering together. I mean, it's really tempting, and just even as a parent, to think about dropping my kid off or my student off at youth group, and they're going to do the discipleship for me, or send them to Sunday school. But I like that partnership idea of we're both in this together. There are things that we do as a church that maybe parents can't do as easily at home, and vice versa. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's super important to have the family events. Yeah. So that we're all together and it's not just a drop-off event. Yeah. And so they're growing together. And, the biggest thing for parents and kids is learning how to play together. Yeah. And youth and their younger siblings remembering how to play together, because sometimes they lose that, whether it be because of screens or whatever busyness of life. Yeah. It's just so important to stop and take an hour or two and just play. Yeah. And so that's kind of why, coming up is our Valentine's party, and the other part of that too, even if you're not a part of that family, I think it's important that families get to know other families. Yeah. Because I know for myself, what's been super important for Matt and I is to have other adults other than us kind of encourage and mentor our kids. Yes. Yes. And so the more that we can get the older generation to mentor or help partner with those parents, to just encourage those kids and disciple those kids, it's more likely that those kids will stay in church. Yeah, yeah. So that's what we've seen in our own household. Yeah, we have too. I think about different people that our kids just gravitated to, whether it was when they were younger and they were sort of surrogate grandparents because their grandparents were many miles away, or more recently as teenagers, their small group leader at youth group, that just forming a relationship, and nothing excites us more than to know that they've got another
adult in their life that cares very deeply about them and their faith and,
Yes.
and their growth, that they, if they can't come to us,
Right.
I'm so glad that they can come to them, and they'll
Absolutely.
contribute something that I can't. So
Yeah.
that's neat when that happens. Really, really pretty cool. We've talked a little bit about some of our incredible volunteers. I can attest to that as well. You've got quite a group of volunteers that pour into the lives of kiddos each week. About how many people do you think serve in some capacity on a given week in kids ministry here?
I know, I was trying to count.
Yeah.
Probably between 35 and 40 every week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably, and that's also counting the youth that serve.
Right.
Which it is great to have them do that.
Yeah.
I want them to have a heart to serve, and that maybe they'll continue to do that after high school.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, 30, 40 different lives that are touching, impacting our young people
Yes.
in significant ways. And maybe they don't have a significant relationship with all 40, but just even showing up on a Wednesday or a Sunday, okay, I recognize that face. Yep. And then just speaking of volunteers here, it's true, especially I think, with kids and maybe to some degree with student ministry, it can be intimidating for some people to work with kids. I hear people say it every once in a while, I'm just not wired to be hands-on in kids ministry. But Amy, what are maybe some other ways that others in our church could take part in serving kids, either directly or maybe in more of that behind-the-scenes role?
Yeah. Directly, kind of like what I said before, if you want to greet kids at a door, that's a great way to do that. Or just come and learn and observe first and see if it's for you. If you want to be a substitute teacher, maybe you can't commit to the long haul. But if you can be on my substitute teacher list and I could give you a call once a month if I need to or something like that, that would be really helpful. I think indirect ways, one, if anybody out there is really great at crafts, because I'm not, and I think that one's, it would be like a behind the scenes. They could plan the crafts, get the crafts ready, things like that for a Wednesday night, possibly a Sunday morning. That would be really great. There's washing water jugs in the classrooms every week. That takes time. And if you're more of a servant and want to clean, we have toys in the preschool room, kindergarten room, nursery to clean toys. Lots of different things like that that you can help with. So
I think it's just ask and just say, here are my gifts. Here's my availability.
Somebody might be good on social media, which I do have a person doing emails and social media right now, which is great. She also teaches though, so I don't want to burn her out on anything. So, but she kind of going back to partnering with parents, we did put out an email this year, and Kara Nicholson's been doing that, and she's been doing fantastic at creating these emails and putting them out to parents. And I love it because there's always questions for parents to ask kids, and they're real direct questions. And so those are different ways you can help, and just pray for us. So
don't underestimate just the power of prayer in any of these ministries. But I get that weekly email too. I don't have kids in kids ministry, but it's engaging. It's fun to just kind of get a glimpse of, oh, this is what went on a Wednesday, and this is what our kids are doing. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So we talked about some of the programming, Sundays, Wednesdays, the weekly stuff, but part of KidsBin is also some of these special events. We talked a little bit about VBS. You mentioned the Valentine's party here coming up. Amy, other special events and opportunities for kids and families throughout the year that folks can take part in, and what's maybe even on the horizon?
Our Valentine's Day party coming up on February 8th, and really anybody can come to that. And that's the thing with the whole family all the family events that we have, I would love for anybody to come.
Yeah.
Youth and their parents, older folks, whoever would like to just come and enjoy and be a kid at heart, or whatever. But I'm planning to have our movie night come back in June.
Okay.
I'm kind of excited. I think I might do the kind of Christmas in June kind of thing and do the best Christmas pageant ever.
Okay.
Like that's my hope. So it'll be kind of different and fun, but that's kind of my plan. And then our family park nights are coming back.
Oh yeah.
I'm still working out on where we're going to have those this time. I feel like we're going to maybe move them into a different community, maybe where kids can't drive from to get to a park.
Yeah.
And so more go by areas where the kids are, and families. Maybe some of those families that are more in need, more of an outreach. So that's going to be coming back this summer. And then when we had our 100th anniversary, like fall family fun day.
Yes.
I'm going to keep that going. So I'm really excited.
Okay.
We're going to have like a fall family festival, probably the end of September-ish.
That was a ton of fun.
Like
I mean, even though the weather didn't quite, wasn't what we wanted, there was a huge turnout for
There
that.
was.
And
It
I
was
think
really
a lot of
great.
people
And I'm excited to just keep it going. I really like the outside option.
Yeah.
And so
that's cool.
Super fun.
Okay. Yeah. And I think is it this spring that we're sending maybe some kids to Chaminade for a retreat?
Yep. Every spring they go to Chaminade, 4th and 5th graders. And so they were excited last night, kind of when I made that first announcement. And there might be an opportunity for people to help kids get there.
Yeah.
We'd like to raise probably about $40 per kid to help their cost. So
yeah, and those are such memorable kind of milestone events in kids' lives. So
yeah,
I hope that we do get to do that, and that a bunch of them get to go. So
yeah,
cool. All right. And so I mean, I think that's just one of the things is kids ministry is happening all the time.
Yes.
And if you're sort of out of the kids at home game, it's easy to just let it go right over your head. But I think it's important for us as a whole church family to, even if we're not going to be here on a Wednesday night and whatnot, just to pay a little more attention to what's going on and why it's happening. And mostly because it's a whole lot of fun, and it's just really neat to see how kids are being discipled through our church here. Yeah,
I've really noticed recently, like, kids just want to be talked to. It's so fun. Even just to ask them what their favorite color is. Yeah. And that just makes them feel so special.
Yeah.
That you would stop and just ask.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Good. Well, Amy, we're going to wrap this up here. And one of the things we do on the podcast here is at the end of every episode, I like to ask this question that's kind of less related to directly to our discussion topic. So that we always talk about becoming deeply devoted followers of Jesus together. Amy, I'd love to hear from you. Just maybe what's one thing that you've been blessed by lately that is deepening your devotion to Jesus?
I think it's the life of my volunteers and just how they're sharing their stories with me. Many of them have shared their God moments. They've shared hurts. They've shared need of prayer. They've shared their stories of the Holy Spirit leading them in a certain way, and they were obedient, even though it was weird or hard. And so that's been kind of keeping me going and deepening my faith is watching my volunteers send me a text and say, the Holy Spirit has been working on me in this, or one volunteer said he was encountered in a elevator with people that were asking him questions, and he was able to share who Christ was. I mean, just things like that. Yeah. It's been neat to hear those stories. Yeah. And I think it just kind of piggybacks all those stories that we're sharing with the kids too, of Jesus. And I've been encouraging my volunteers to share those stories, and they have been. Yeah. And so that's even deepening my faith.
Okay. Yeah, it just kind of goes to show that, discipleship happens in all kinds of ways and forms, sometimes very informally. Yeah. These aren't just Wednesday night workers, that these are, these are people that we're building relationships with. And you're growing in your faith, they're growing in their faith, and kind of serving each other. So, great. Well, I think that'll do it for this episode of the Deeply Devoted podcast. For our listeners, in 2 weeks, we're going to continue on with our podcast read-along through Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. We're going to dive into the next section, which is Book 2, called What Christians Believe. We still have a few copies of the book available for sale in the Connection Cafe if you need to pick one up. But my thanks to Amy Graf for joining me today on the podcast.
Thanks, Eric, for having me on.
Always fun to talk with you, Amy. We'll probably do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
I had an idea in the back of my mind of a future one that we'll have to talk about sometime. But we'll be back next Tuesday with another episode. And until then, have a great week. Thanks for listening.